welcome to our presentation today with Dr. Ostermiller. We're really glad to see all of your faces and have you here. The Ponderosa Center wanted to do something for the community during this time, and what we figured out we could do was provide a virtual gathering space and also some education and entertainment. So today it's education, and we hope you enjoy it. The way that we're going to do this today is that Dan is going to share his presentation for all of you to see, and we're going to go through the whole presentation. If you have questions, you'll see when you move your mouse that there is a chat function. If you have a question, just put into the chat function there, you know, like raise your hand, put your name or something. And when the presentation is over, we'll go down the list in the order of that. And I will unmute you to actually ask the question to Dr. Ostermiller. But we're going to get through the whole presentation first, just to make sure that everyone has the information. And your questions might get answered the further we get into the presentation. So if we're ready, Dr. Ostermiller, you can go ahead and share your screen and we'll get started. So thanks for being here today.
Okay, here comes my presentation. So everyone will become much smaller, I think. And now you want to play. Oh, thanks. Lisa is here because she's my IT expert.
Sort of. Hi, everyone.
I'm sorry, I forgot to say, and Lisa Ostermiller is here as well. She's the technical expert over there.
The support.
The support person. So, thanks, Lisa.
Yeah, happy to be here.
Lisa has been around since the beginning when we started studying integrative medicine together. And we brought integrative medicine to this community. Back in 2006 is when the Integrative Medicine Clinic was opened. And prior to that, we were designing the pillars of integrative medicine. By the way, COVID-19 has changed everything, and we are all in this together. I guess one positive is that we are now getting more used to using Zoom. I'm going to spend quite a bit of time on the pillars of integrative medicine. And really, when we put together integrative medicine in 2005 and opened the center in 2006, we came up with these pillars by having meetings at this house. Lyle Nelson was part of those meetings. Tiffany Dobbs was part of those meetings. Connie McLaren was part of those meetings. And the pillars,
Susan
McCandless was part of that. Rachel Art was our dietitian. As a family physician in our community and practicing the emergency room and delivering babies, I could see degenerative diseases presenting to the emergency room, like a heart disease, diabetes, cancer, you know, lifestyle choices that were bad at that time, and people were then suffering the consequences of it. And I thought there must be a better way than seeing people in the emergency room and treating their acute heart attack using Renovase, transporting to Boise for cardiology consult. And that's what led me into really thinking about integrative medicine. And prior to that, I also studied acupuncture. I went to a nutrition conference in approximately 2002, and that was very enlightening. And it was presented by the University of Arizona, and it was the Arizona Center for Integrative Medicine that was presenting the nutrition conference. And I realized that was an important pillar for community health and for individual health. Andy Weil worked a lot with Dr. Walter Willett. He is the Harvard-based physician that worked with 120,000 nurses and diet, as well as 70,000 health professionals, men and women, and looked at what Americans were eating and doing, and then relating that to certain disease processes. And between those two, they came up with the anti-inflammatory diet. And really the anti-inflammatory diet is a diet based on the Mediterranean diet, but also using certain herbs or supplements from other healthy communities in the world. The basis of it is plant-based. So when you go shopping, you should really go to the vegetable aisles, the fruit aisles, and fill up your carts there. It's also based on healthy oils like olive oil. It's also based, other healthy oils include avocado. It's also based on healthy protein, or particularly fish, chicken, occasional red meat, and certain spices. And the very top of the pyramid, they came up with high density cocoa chocolate, which makes my patients very happy when that's brought in. So a good portion of this presentation is going to be on supplements, and that will be presented later. Part of the Mediterranean diet also involves exercise. And by the way, if you keep inflammation down and your body is healthy, you live to a ripe old age without all the degenerative problems. And you get to an old age, and then you have a final event and then die. And that's probably the healthy way of aging. The unhealthy way of aging is if you have poor lifestyle habits, you have all these degenerative problems, which I mentioned, including heart disease, high blood pressure, diabetes, metabolic syndrome, and then you wind up on different medications and you have more and more problems, and then eventually you die at an earlier age with all those problems because you didn't have healthy aging. But exercise is part of the healthy aging and part of the anti-inflammatory diet. And I recommend picking out an exercise that you enjoy doing. Otherwise, you won't continue to do it. And it can be as simple as walking, hiking, biking, skiing. Lisa and I have particularly enjoyed going out into nature and sitting down and just looking at nature change. And so we get our walks in also being in nature. The third pillar, mind-body connection and coping with stress. We're all under a lot of stress recently. It's COVID, and then recently a loss of jobs, stressor with financial issues. And all stress is not a healthy place to be. It does increase cortisol, which helps, it influences the immune system in the wrong way. And coping with stress, there are lots of different ideas. And Susie Smith gave a great introduction to breath work. And that's also linked to the Ponderosa Center, which you can go ahead and view if you want after this meeting.
The 6-second technique.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
And this technique has been around since the 1970s. She's been teaching it. Since then, there's been an explosion in yoga and breath work and meditation. And Lisa and I both use Andy's app called headspace.com. And we try to meditate on a daily basis, at least for 15 minutes. And part of that is using breath work and dealing with stress. Andy Weil, when I took the fellowship program at University of Arizona, that was one of his most important items that he wanted to teach us was breath work and how to cope with stress. And he has a technique called the 4-7-8 breath work, which you can go online to the Andy Weil Center for Integrative Medicine now and look up his 4-7-8 breath work. The next pillar is relationship and community. And relationships are obviously important, and it's wonderful to be married to Lisa for 37 years plus. And that's been a stable and healthy relationship that's helped, I think, both of us.
Stay healthy.
And stay healthy. And actually, men benefit more than women. So men, pay attention to that. Relationships and community. Idaho is a small state. And when people die from COVID disease, it hits home. It hits us right to the heart because they're part of our community. We know those names, even though it's been not a huge amount of people who have been dying, but enough. And my heart goes out to the family members of our community who have lost these wonderful people. And we have friends in Blaine County, Ada County, and all over southern Idaho, as well as Idaho itself. Which kind of brings me back to modeling and how modeling has helped our state deal with the COVID virus. So all the social changes and the stay at home that we have done has really been influenced by very smart people and a very smart governor. Greg Urban, our chief of staff in McCall, was an early person to speak early and say, let's prevent people from coming into our community and possibly bringing COVID to our community. Brad Little, our governor, has had good advisors. He's listened, and he has started to stay at home early enough in Idaho. We had examples from all over the country, including California, Washington, and Oregon. We could see the problem advancing. On Idaho and Montana, since we're less populated, we had more time to instigate and get the proper social changes that have helped give us more time. Right now, we're on the shoulder or the top of our peak for COVID incidents. And now's not the time to say, oh, maybe we overreacted and maybe we can start pulling back. We really need more information. We need more testing in our communities and state, as well as across the nation. New York City might be a great community to look at the antibody titers. We really don't know how affected a large center like New York is, even with their social isolation, how many people have had it. We don't know if we have enough people affected for herd immunity. So a lot more information needs to be obtained before people who do these modeling and the experts in infectious disease can continue to advise our governor and our politicians. And really I think we should all expect that's going to take some time. The R value, which has been mentioned a lot, is how contagious the virus is. So if one person develops the virus, how many people will they infect? And we've heard values as high as 2 to 3, and it might be as low as 1.3 or 1.4, but it has a huge difference. That number has a huge difference in the modeling. And that number hasn't really been obtained yet as well. I want to give a shout out to our community, and our community came together and made masks for the entire community, and a good friend made this mask for me. And
Custom.
And when I wear this mask, I'm protecting other people. It's not that I'm protecting myself from the virus, I'm protecting the people from droplets, or if I cough or sneeze. And that's why we wear masks. I'm going to move on to our next pillar, which is sleep. And there's a lot to mention in this regard, but 7 to 8 hours per night is optimal. And they did an interesting study looking at undergrad students at University of California, Los Angeles. And I don't know how they got them to participate in this study. It must have had something to do with money. But half of the undergrads or the group population were sleep deprived for 7 days. And they had a linear sleep deprivation, whether it was 4 or 5 hours, 6 or 7 hours, 7 or 8 hours. And then they had a group that was not sleep deprived. The group that was sleep deprived, they then shot coronavirus, which is a common cold virus, into the nose I don't know how they talked them into it, but they did.
Coronavirus?
Excuse me, not coronavirus.
The cold virus.
A cold virus, yeah, rhinovirus. Thanks for correcting me.
Yeah.
So it was a rhinovirus. They talked him into it, into the sleep deprived as well as the non-sleep deprived. The sleep deprived had an incidence of cold of 50%. The non-sleep deprived had only an 18% incidence of colds.
That's huge.
Yeah,
That's a big difference.
and that's why we're talking about all these pillars that can help prevent coming down with coronavirus, or if you do come down with it, you come down to it a less extent. Also, in regards to immunization, they looked at the flu vaccine, and they had a sleep-deprived group and a not sleep-deprived group, again for 7 days. They were then given the flu vaccine, and then they checked for antibody titer. There was a 50% decrease in antibody titer in the group that was sleep-deprived. And that persisted even at 1 year. When they checked for that antibody titer for that particular flu vaccine, it was still present at 1 year. Nobody really caught up with that. Sleep also helps with memory. The hippocampus is our inbox. When we sleep at night, our sleep and deep sleep, REM sleep, and also all those stages of sleep help the memory go to the cortex, and then we remember things and wake up refreshed. It also helps prevent cancer. If you just miss one night of sleep, your natural killer cells that help prevent cancer are decreased by 70%. Sleep does a lot of other things, and that could be a whole nother talk.
So lights out, folks.
If I move on to the sixth pillar, which is greater purpose, when we put on the SHIFT program in McCall, which was our lifestyle changes, presenting all these pillars, and we had great people presenting, including Lyle Nelson and all those people I talked about earlier. Part of the purpose of coming to that was learning new ideas on how to improve your own health, how to improve your family's health, and how to improve your community's health. And I asked everyone to share all those ideas with their family, friends, and community. And wasn't it absolutely interesting that McCall was the healthiest county in the United States 3 or 4 years ago? And this community has still come together, and obviously with production of these masks and now fighting the COVID virus. And we're still a very healthy county because of all that. But I'd also like to add one other greater purpose that's important to me now, and that's the health of our planet. We can't really maintain our own health, our community's health, our state's health, our country's health, unless we maintain our planet's health. Climate change is no hoax, and we need to get serious about dealing with climate change. We need to help the world deal with that problem. Hopefully the rest of the slides will go by a little bit faster. And my next slide is on pandemics of the past. Zoonotic diseases are diseases shared by humankind as well as animals. And these cross over, and when they do, there can be bad consequences for humankind. The AIDS virus was 100% lethal when I finished medical school and started into residency. We had no antivirals for this. Dr. Fauci is one of the chief engineers for starting a lot of the antivirals that helped stop and slow down and prevent AIDS. Obviously, West Nile virus was present with mosquitoes, Lyme's disease with ticks. SARS and MERS are both coronaviruses that were quite deadly, but the contagion rate was very low. Ebola virus is very, pardon?
Did I spell MERS wrong? Sorry.
I'm not sure. Ebola virus was very lethal at 80 to 90%. By the way, it took 4 to 5 years to come out with a vaccine for Ebola virus. Our pandemics are really caused by mankind. It's high density animal farms. It's overpopulation of humankind. It's moving from country to the cities and loss of the family farm. It's habitat destruction and now climate change, which is all going to increase our risk of pandemics. I have a chicken, I have pictures of a high density chicken farm, and avian flu. You can see how if chicken develops influenza that's selected for chickens, it can become very deadly. In fact, it's 60% deadly, and they'll lose 60% of their chickens. But every once in a while, that influenza virus will become present in humankind. It's very low contagion, but when it does present in humankind, it's 60% lethal. And so I just wanted to show a picture of this, because wouldn't it be nicer to see these chickens out in an open field on a family farm? And that's maybe what we have to think more of in the future. A lot of my talk is based from Andrew Wells Center for Integrative Medicine. And a lot of this was the faculty that put this together. And this is the coronavirus. This is the bad culprit. And a virus is, quote, is simply a piece of bad news wrapped up in protein. And the RNA is in the middle. The protein coat is on the outside, and the lipid coat is on the outside. And this is a schematic. This is a rather large virus, but if you take a human hair and you look at the diameter of the human hair, you can put 700 to 1,000 of these viruses along the human hair. It's moderate to highly infectious. We really don't know the R value of the coronaviruses yet. It's moderately virulent. We really don't know the virulence, because we don't know how many total people are affected and how many people wind up. The goal of this virus is reproduction, and it's to take over the world. The Achilles heel of this virus is this lipid envelope. And that's to remind people to wash with soap for 20 seconds, because you destroy the virus by the soap destroying the lipid membrane. Vaccines and antivirals, our vaccine is going to take 1.5 years to come up with, and antivirals really don't exist except for the supplements that I'm going to talk about next. So how COVID-19 takes over your body: the virus bonds to the epithelium, the pseudostratified ciliated epithelium in the lungs, or in the mucosa, or in the also present in our sinuses. And once inside the cell, it takes over the machinery of the cell to make new viruses. And the blueprint is the RNA of the virus. The RNA, once it replicates itself multiple times, it wraps itself back up in the lipid coat as well as the protein coat, and then leaves the host cell. And this is a picture of an alveoli, an air sac in the lung, because the greatest concern with this coronavirus is that it causes acute respiratory distress syndrome and cytokine storm. And the idea is, if we can keep this virus as an upper respiratory infection and not cause a lower respiratory infection or pneumonia, we're better off. Also, if we have a healthy immune system that doesn't kick into overdrive that causes the cytokine storm, we're better off. By the way, when we first become infected with this virus, our immune system doesn't react for 2 to 3 days. It's never seen it before, or even 4 days. And so the virus will have its own way with our epithelium and start creating problems. Once the immune system sees what's going on, and this is a picture of the macrophage coming in to
that green blob on the left.
Green blob on the left. The macrophage then hooks onto the virus and then presents it to the lymphocyte. The lymphocyte then starts producing antibodies, and then these interleukins, the messages between the white cells, cause the high fever, the myalgias, the achy muscles, and also can go into overdrive and cause harm or more fluid to collect and cause a worsening pneumonia.
And I think you need to mention that this is all important, this background, because later you're going to introduce which supplements work at which stage of the virus, right?
Lisa's exactly right. So I'm sorry this is take
It's kind of complicated, but
yeah.
it'll get clearer.
So really, if we can prevent the virus from entering the body, or if it does, that we stop it before it even causes an infection. If it does cause an infection, if it's just an upper respiratory tract, that's much better off. And by the way, majority of us have an upper respiratory infection, and it doesn't necessarily develop into the pneumonia. If you do develop pneumonia, it can become serious and you might need hospitalization. And then the 1 to 2%, because of ARDS and the cytokine storm, it can be quite lethal, even up to 50% lethal. So the bottom line, a healthy immune system can lessen the chance of ARDS and the cytokine storm. And that's why you're here today, is to keep yourself healthy. So try to prevent the infection, try to stop the virus from replicating or spreading in the body, try to prevent cytokine storm without inhibiting antiviral immunity. That's why you can't just take prednisone, because if you stop the immune system, the virus will continue to multiply, and that can't happen as well. And then you try to hasten recovery. The next segment of my talk is really on dietary supplements. And what's important here is that most of the work on dietary supplements has been done on animal models. So these are mice, these are mouse models, these are rat studies. And the reason they've been done not necessarily on people is because really supplements can't be patented. And you know, drug companies don't want to spend millions of dollars on something that can't be patented. And that's why the human studies really haven't been done on coronavirus and supplements. Plus, it's relatively rare. So the studies here really are based largely on preclinical evidence that has worked in animal models. And these should be used in addition to the health measures and conventional treatments that we're using now. And this is a slide that talks about risk versus benefit. If you have an herb or a supplement that has low possible risk, but maybe high likely benefit because it's helped animal models, or it has an obvious explanation on how it would be helpful, then it's probably worth trying. Now, if you have a low likely benefit with a high positive risk, and some of these things are like in chemotherapy, you're down to your last straw. It has a high risk, low possible benefit, or maybe even has a moderate possible benefit. You're willing to take that risk because it's been studied and it shows it does have marked benefit. It's been studied in people. And that's kind of the difference between looking at, that's an integrative medicine idea, really thinking about how we choose what to treat people with. So supplements are low risk. Okay, thanks. So there's receptors on the epithelial cells that the virus uses, and there's certain supplements or herbs here that can help prevent that. One is astragalus, and we were just out hiking on the hills next to our house. And astragalus is a pea vine, or a pea family, and it's the root of that pea family, and then you can get that as a tincture. Quercetin also binds to the ACE and prevents the virus from attaching, and quercetin is found in the skin of apples, but a lot of fruit, grapes, as well as onions. Vitamin D3, well, we have sunlight now, so we can start making vitamin D3 again, but it also reduces activation and attachment of the virus. Elderberry is present around our house, and Darcy Williamson says this shows luck for the house and good benefits for the household. Elderberry should not be eaten raw. If you do eat it raw, it can cause emesis or vomiting, as well as diarrhea.
It's available widely as tincture, as lozenges, as, yeah.
And it does have evidence in cold studies and other studies. So elderberry would be something to take. There is one last slide, because really this is working on the interleukins, and it might be increasing one interleukin or one of the white cell, the way they communicate. It might help with cold virus, but it also might worsen cytokine storm. So this is one supplement that you should not take if you develop COVID. You should stop taking elderberry at that point in time. Zinc stops replication of the virus, and it works down at the messenger RNA level. By the way, zinc and vitamin C are being, physicians have had to be really inventive because of COVID, and they've been inventive in a bunch of different ways. One is in ventilators and taking patients and position them from supine position and causing sedation to keeping them more awake and placing them on their stomachs. I mean, they've done all sorts of things, and they've watched the oxygen saturation increase. But zinc and vitamin C are also some of the supplements that are being used in our ICU setting and to help prevent COVID as well, even though there's probably no good human studies on these and COVID at this point in time as well. So vitamin D, remember, if at this time of year we're getting enough sunlight in Idaho, that we get enough UVB between 10 and 2 p.m. If you expose areas of your body that aren't getting a lot of sun, like your legs, abdomen, chest, but definitely keep sun off of your face, you can make vitamin D. As far as taking a supplement of vitamin D, usually I recommend 2,000 units per day. A lot of us are inside, and we're even now not getting enough vitamin D through sunlight. But vitamin D is one of those substances, again, if you come down with COVID, you should go ahead and stop vitamin D while you have COVID, because too much can potentiate some of the immune response and cause cytokine storm again.
Do you have dosages? Okay.
Yeah, 2,000 units per day if you do a supplement. And if you happen to know your vitamin D level, you can base that more on your vitamin D level. And during the summer, if you're getting adequate sunlight, can give you 17,000 units in 20 minutes. That's where sunlight exposure is really helpful.
Yeah, I wanted you to bring that one up. 20 minutes.
Yeah.
You can make a whole bunch.
Vitamin C, there's a inflammatory response ongoing that can lead to the cytokine storm, and vitamin C helps control that inflammasome. Melatonin is a natural hormone that we make at nighttime to help us sleep. By decreasing light at night and also by looking at light in the morning, our pineal body will help manufacture melatonin, but it's not unhelpful. You can take melatonin 2 to 3 milligrams at bedtime to help you sleep, as well as it will help decrease the inflammasome as well. It's a safe supplement at 2 to 3 milligrams.
Do you have the dosages listed somewhere?
I didn't, because most of this is through diet, nutrition, and sunlight, but those two are, I'm glad you asked about the dosages for those.
Okay.
Vitamin C dose should be 250 milligrams per day. If you come down with COVID, it doesn't hurt to go up to 1,000 milligrams a day. Plant flavonoids, and that's all these vegetables and fruit on the right side. So there's all sorts of different flavonoids, but it's all the colorful fruit and vegetables. And if you can get your 7 to 10 servings of fruit and vegetables a day, you're going a long way to helping deal with the virus and reducing problems. Quercetin we already talked about is apples and oranges, but it also helps with some of these interleukins. Garlic, activates innate immune cells. Really, that's working with are some of the macrophages, T cells, and lymphocytes. Epigallocatechin. I enjoy saying that, but it's also in green tea, and I drink a lot of green tea every day. And it down regulates inflammatory cytokines, and I recommend green tea for everybody. Curcumin, excuse me, which is turmeric, is one of my favorite spices that we use almost on a daily basis. And it suppresses a whole bunch of different things. Entry of the virus, activation of the virus replication, and even RNA replication.
We even put it in our French toast this morning.
There you go, thank you. It's a nice spice. It adds a little bit of warmth to everything that you cook, and yet it can be something sweet as well.
And I was going to say too that these slides will all be available on the website. So if you want to go back to refer to them later, you can do that.
Yeah, you can.
Yeah.
By the way, turmeric is it's present in India. It's present in their curry, and they have a very low cancer rate. And I think they have a high. They use a lot of plants in their diet, and I don't know how they're doing with COVID, but hopefully all those things are going to be factors to help them deal with COVID. The last thing I want to talk about is mushrooms. And Dr. Weil has been a big believer in mushrooms as well as Paul Stamets. And you can get these at Albertsons. And the two that we really like is shiitake and oyster mushrooms that you can cook with. You can also order mushrooms through Fungi Perfecti, and that's one of my my next slide. So in summary, while there are no clinical trials documenting the effectiveness of various dietary supplements, so there's no human clinical trials, there's only the mouse studies. Prevention and management of SARS-CoV-2 infection, there is a substantial body of preclinical research on selected dietary supplements which indicate possible benefit with low or no risk of harm. These strategies, there's not a substitute for public health measures of the physical distancing, hand washing, and stay at home. Avoid touching the face, etc. Furthermore, it's imperative to seek medical care for fever, cough, and difficulty breathing. It is advisable to consult with a knowledgeable integrative practitioner before starting any new dietary supplement. This is all a review of just what I went over. And I guess I'd like to add two more vitamins to this. Is we do take a multivitamin. The multivitamin is full of B vitamins. B vitamins are very healthy for the immune system and the white cells. But also in that multivitamin, it does have zinc. It also has vitamin C. It has vitamin D and vitamin A, some other important vitamins. Also, fish oil is also very important. Fish oil is important for our lipid profile as well as an anti-inflammatory. These are all from our pantry at our house, and these are pictures that I took. And the reason I presented these is because I wanted to show you how we use turmeric, and we use turmeric with black pepper. The black pepper makes turmeric more bioavailable. It allows you to absorb more turmeric. Also, I put the bowl of turmeric there with a spoon in it, because when you use the shaker, I can never get as much turmeric as I want.
It's kind of clumpy.
Yeah, it does. It holds together.
Yeah, so it doesn't shake out very good. Plus we use spoonfuls of it anyway. So, and that black pepper can is like ancient, but I just put organic bulk black pepper in that can because I love that can. It's an old can. Anyway. We should keep moving because
yes,
you're almost done.
Here's some of the supplements we have in our cabinet that I pulled out. The elderberry, again, don't use that during COVID itself, and vitamin D, don't use it during COVID itself. These are mushrooms that we order through Paul Stamets, and Lisa also ordered dried mushrooms very inexpensively. Some of these are oyster, and some of these are reishi mushrooms, which are kind of the king of mushrooms to help prevent cancer as well as viral disease. This is to remind you about quercetin in apples and onions as well as garlic. And the right lower corner is we get bulk green tea, as well as green tea is available in all sorts of different tea bags, etc.
There's so many ways to make green tea. It's like, you can't even count them.
Here are the supplements to avoid during COVID. This talk was based on a webinar, an integrative approach to COVID, free from the University of Arizona, Andrew Weil Center for Integrative Medicine. And I put his website, Fungi Perfecti website, our own pantry. And questions, you can contact me or ask questions at this point in time. But before we do that, I do want to thank the Ponderosa Center and the board of the Ponderosa Center for putting this together and allowing me to talk. I also really want to thank Nicole Musgrove. She's the development director who is with us today, as well as Joan Edwards, who is one of the board members. They have a vision to put together a center in our town that art, as well as music and education, will be presented at in the future. In the meantime, we're using Zoom.
So if we stop sharing now, then we can see the people. Does that sound good, Nicole, when they ask their questions?
Yep, that sounds just fine. We can stop sharing the screen and allow people to ask some questions. If you do have a question, if you can just...
Hey, hello.
Go ahead.
Who was that? Did somebody say something? Sorry. If you have a question, you can either raise your hand or put something in the chat function there to say that you'd like to ask a question. Joan?
I posed the question, since sleep is so important, can you do another program about sleep? I've actually used this period of time to improve my sleep, and so it's been a real benefit. And there are so many tricks to it that, quite frankly, I ignored, because I'm now that I see what Sweden's doing with the COVID, I realize it's my bullheaded Swedish background. I kind of ignored some of them, but I think it would be good to hear those from you and maybe other people that have successfully gone from a phase of not being a good sleeper to actually improving their sleep. I'd really appreciate that.
Yeah, thanks, Joan. I would love to talk about sleep. I've talked about it in the past, and there's lots of new evidence over the last 15 years supporting sleep and all the benefits it does for us. Lisa and I both are using Oura rings, which, yeah, and so amazing. People are using a lot of wearable devices that actually give you a sleep sonogram that measures deep sleep, REM sleep, spindle sleep, and it measures light sleep. And each of those sleep, talking about sleep would be fantastic. I'd be glad to do that.
I'll take that as a commitment.
Okay.
You're good at that, Joan.
Sorry.
Anyone else have a question?
Okay.
The stage is yours.
I actually have to hop off for another meeting. So thank you very much, Dr. Ostermiller. Appreciate this and really enjoyed your presentation.
Thanks, Sherry.
Thanks, Sherry.
Bye, Sherry.
Well, he really covered everything if nobody has any questions. Okay.
You know, I had some interesting questions when I presented this. I presented this to the hospital staff, and some interesting questions came up in regards to the heart effects of this disease. And there are
Heart
disease, congestive failure. People have all sorts of heart issues with this disease. And during the process of the virus replicating itself and leaving, it uses another one of our enzymes. It's called phospholipase A. And I was using that when I was looking at my own patients to see if that was elevated, because that's a pro-inflammatory state. And by using all these techniques, when we bring down inflammation, I think you prevent a lot of these problems. And so that was just one more evidence to me of, and that was in the Journal of Virology on mouse studies again, that they showed that there is decreased amount of virus and the mice were healthier who had a lower phospholipase present. And anyway, I thought that was really interesting about that.
Sowers?
My question is on your supplements, the multivitamin that you use, which company do you go with? Who makes them?
Yeah, Metagenics is what we're using. But there's a lot of good multivitamins out there.
I know it's very confusing.
If you'd like us to, why don't you email us and we'll send you what that exact multivitamin is.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Yep, sure.
Are there any more questions?
We're happy to answer any questions via email as well.
Well, if there's no more questions at this time, I want to thank all of you for joining us, and thank you to Dan and Lisa for putting together this wonderful presentation. We appreciate you coming out of retirement to take care of your fellow McCallites. It's great to have you doing that with us. We're going to take his presentation and turn it into a PDF document, and so we can email that out to everyone so you can look a little closer at the slides and read them and get some more information. Maybe we can add another page to it that has some more detailed information about anything that you want to add.
Yeah, you can do that.
So looks like we're going to start planning a sleep presentation, so be on the lookout for that. Ponderosa Center is continuing to put together some virtual gathering and learning and entertainment options. If you're interested, this Friday evening, Bistro 45 and the Ponderosa Center are hosting a virtual wine tasting. You get 3 full bottles of wine and a paired appetizer plate that you should pick up from Bistro 45, and then you'll get a link to log in, just like this. We'll have a wine tasting at 6 o'clock on Friday. So anyway, it's going to be a lot of fun. Thanks so much for joining us today, everyone. Thank you again to the Ostermillers. Very appreciative of your time. And good seeing all of your faces. Everybody take care.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Bye.
Thank you. Take care.
Big hug to you all.
Thanks a lot.
Bye-bye. Bye.